Welcome to Buy It on BirchStreet, the weekly show where we highlight the best of procure-to-pay on demand in innovation, automation, and solutions to help save you and your customers valuable money and time. BirchStreet Systems provides global enterprises with multiple locations a complete procure-to-pay business solution deploying cloud technology. I'm your host, Gareth Fraser. We welcome our guest today, who is Solutions Consultant for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa at BirchStreet Systems, Custodio Barreiros.
Thank you very much for having me, Gareth.
Let's begin by having you share some of your professional background and what brought you to BirchStreet Systems.
I think the best way to describe it is I was literally born inside a hotel. Both my parents, as many Portuguese immigrants in the 70s, worked in hospitality. My father in food and beverage, and then moved his way across all different departments. My mother in housekeeping. From a young age, I grew up in the back of house of hotels in Park Lane in London. From property to property, I moved upways and sideways, as they say, all the way to corporate level for a number of years, working in some wonderful properties from near St. Paul's Cathedral all the way to the Great Connaught Rooms and so forth in London. One of the things that I did as well was I had a little hobby looking after high net worth individuals, being an adult babysitter, I think is the best way to describe it. And when time allowed, I always played with consultancy with different brands, different properties because of my contacts. For great friendships, in 2014, after taking a little break from hospitality, during that year, I decided I needed to come back through a 9-to-5 job, as I call it, mainly because my son needed me more. And by coincidentally, I met someone who is a friend, a colleague for the last 10 plus years, Dan Heiser. And he said, I've got a job, do you want to come and see me? After 3 dates being moved, the usual thing between us and being busy, I went to see him, and the rest is history. I joined my previous role before arriving at BirchStreet. I worked with Dan and with Duncan and a few other colleagues of ours that we've got here. I was responsible for service optimization, hot source internationally for Amadeus. And then in 2019, when I returned again to Amadeus, Dan again called. And it just comes to then the third time lucky. Last year, I decided I wanted to leave proactive sales. After a call with Duncan, I think 5 seconds later, as we all know in industry, Dan Heiser called me and said, this is what's happening. You're going to speak to Kim this afternoon. John Figg is going to call you tomorrow. We're going to tell you what the job is. Please behave on the call with Kim and do what you do best. And we'll speak to you 24 hours later. This was on a Tuesday. By Friday, I had a contract. And by Monday, I was given a start date. Was everything at the speed of light? So that's what brought me here. But as they say, all best things happens in threes instead of the other way around. And I've been very fortunate to have good friends, good colleagues who I stay again in the same company, working side by side with.
And our listeners are already aware of all of the names you just mentioned who have been interviewed right here on Buy It on BirchStreet. And your comments just reinforce the importance of those relationships and the knowledge base and strength that you all collectively bring to BirchStreet Systems. Next up, can you share with us what encompasses your role as a solutions consultant?
I couldn't agree more on your previous point. I think we as a company embody what hospitality is, which is the human aspect, relationship aspect, which also fits very well with what I do at BirchStreet. So solution consultancy very much works with the commercial team in the pre-sales process. If you're looking at demos, product information, RFPs, and ensuring the client has got the full details to make an informed decision on the tool. I think BirchStreet's approach to solution consultancy role is to ensure that the client knows they've got someone as well as not just a salesperson, but there are others there to look after them. And that's why the solution consulting is that first step, the way I see it, is to very much bring that familiarity of the company to the client's table, not just on the product, but all these different modules, but ensure that the client knows what's after as well. So we very much come in on that. I call it assistance is the best way, but that's what hospitality is, to bring in that welcoming feeling to BirchStreet and these products to the client's table.
And to your point, your experience spans up and through and out of the global pandemic internationally. And we'd like to ask you, from your perspective, how have you seen this impacting hospitality's leading brands?
I think one of the things that I saw, and my father started in 1970, and in this industry, I then came into it afterwards. But throughout all these periods and growing up and so forth, the industry was never ready for this pandemic. I don't think humanity ever thought that this could happen. And that was that impact, that initial shock that the big brands took. Also, the fragility of the hospitality industry. We have to see that hospitality for many is not just a career, it's also an entry point to a new country and so forth. And I think those employees were the first ones that were affected and then caused that domino effect to the larger brands. Many brands did adhere to local laws through furlough processes and tried to support staff, but that from an industry which always has lack of resources and funds was very hard to sustain. Also meant that many of its employees had to look for work elsewhere to survive. While the hospitality suffered, other industries thrived, from delivery drivers and so on. And I call it the non-shift workers. So you have to think that hospitality is a 24/7 career. So you may be working on a Monday 9 to 5, but on Tuesday you may be 11 to 3. So therefore, that kind of change is not for everyone. And at times, many, when they can leave it, they do leave it to have more of a steady career. And that also impacted the industry. As well as that, I think leading brands are now faced with reopening properties that they had to close from managed to franchise estates. The lack of staff now is a key topic in our industry, and the lack of resources. But also means that post-pandemic, as we are now, a new type of employees come into the industry. So those brands are having to reshape their processes and adapt. New measures, new legislation has been put in place, not just the sanitization and mask wearing that we all hear about, but much, much more. And of course, I think there is a need to rethink how to position hospitality as a career. 2 to 3 years prior to the pandemic, hospitality was really suffering with just as being the entry point to a country for immigration and so forth, which they rely so much on as an industry, the bigger brands that is. So now to refill the hotels is not just with guests, the need, but with staff. And that means creating career paths. And the new employee is very different than what it was when I started many moons ago. So I think the industry will have to face various changes, not just technological, but also from the human perspective. And I think that's the biggest impact that this industry has received during the pandemic is finally they've had and been forced to change and adapt and modernize, because let's be honest, hospitality is one of the oldest industries around.
To the spirit of changing, adapting, and modernizing, we've seen globally a supply chain challenge. We've seen labor challenges, as you brought out there previously. We're seeing inflation issues. We're seeing paper prices go up around the world. And in that context, and looking at it from your perspective as a solutions consultant internationally, can you share with the audience what you see as the greatest value proposition for the BirchStreet Systems platform?
So I think one of the things that this industry has always suffered is lack of resources. Hospitality, unfortunately, always been right. You have to run with the least amount of resources and monies and make it look as a five-star property. We have to think that our industry is a bit like a piece of art in a gallery. In the front of the house, it's beautiful. In the back of the house, I'm not sure anyone would ever be ready to walk into a canteen, even on a five-star hotel. That really represents the industry. So what does that mean for a tool like BirchStreet to come into play? I think resources, controlling expenses, purchases, expenditures need to be more scrutinized, more detailed than ever before. That means BirchStreet can come in with automation processes, control what teams are ordering, not ordering, approval processes, the data that the system gives to management, as well as the post-procurement aspect of a purchase, i.e. the receiving the goods when it comes in, is the invoice is correct. We have tools in place such as invoice management services, where everything is checked by a human being, not just another scanner. So I think BirchStreet not only understands the industry itself, but understands what the industry is facing, as well as what we are doing with the system currently. And we've seen how the company has even changed in the last 2 months I've been here. I think BirchStreet is coming to a solution for an industry that has exceptional demands on itself right now. And I think all of these processes, workflows, automations that the industry needs to succeed, they'll need a tool like ours, definitely. And the experience that we bring, because I think something needs to be said. We can talk about BirchStreet systems and the great software that it has, but I think the true value of the system is the people that work in the company that assist our clients, from customer success management, support, development, product owners, even sales itself, as we mentioned already. I think the experience that we bring to the table to any client is what makes the system the success it has been for the last 20 years, and I'm sure it will continue to be.
This interview has simply flown by. We only have time for one more question. And for our listeners' benefit, if there was a James Bond, a 007 of Procure to Pay internationally and especially in EMEA, his name would be Custodio Barreiros, a man of many talents, never shaken, but always stirred. So Custodio, a man of mystery, one well-traveled, well-experienced in hospitality, domestically, globally, internationally, outside of work, what other interests do you have?
So I think anyone who's known me, and unfortunately for the years that I have on me already, many people have come across me know that I suffer from being a little bit hyperactive, I think is the best way to describe it. And I blame hospitality for that, admittedly. Family time is very important for me. That is the most priority, the biggest priority. But to help with the hyperactiveness of it, physical activity. I like to be out and about. I start a new hobby every year, as we've discussed personally outside of this call once. Most recently, 2 years ago, I started, and I think I'm becoming addicted to CrossFit just because of the challenges it brings. As I wanted something to take me away from my martial arts and self-defense stuff that I did. And I think to my wife's happiness, she did not want to see me after sparring anymore, so she wanted something a bit lighter. When I said CrossFit, I don't know if that fitted into what she had as an idea. I also own a watt bike. Think about a British version of a Peloton, i.e. it doesn't scream as loud, there's no screaming, but there's a lot of hard work to do. I like motorcycles. So I own a Ducati Monster. So within this legal speed limits, of course, you tend to hear me either on a Saturday or Sunday morning, weather allowing, which sometimes not very often in the UK, riding a Ducati Monster around. At the same time, good food, family time, sometimes a good book. Many don't know, but I studied literature, not hospitality at university. So I do enjoy reading and learning. So I think when after a long ride or a long session in the gym, to come home, enjoy some food and a good book, I think that really sums me up. We have a very busy life in what we do for a living. So it's nice to sometimes know where the sofa is and enjoy family time.
Indeed. And if you need to buy that sofa, couch, or chair, you'd be buying it on BirchStreet, of course. You've been listening to Solutions Consultant for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, Custodio Barreiros. Time's flown by. We've thoroughly enjoyed having you on the show, Custodio.
Thanks, Gareth. Thank you very much.
No problem at all. And for you, our listeners, be sure to go on over to birchstreetsystems.com and browse our website, where you'll find our product offerings of e-procurement, AP, three-way auto match, invoice management, inventory management, recipe management, BirchStreet Pay, capital projects, sourcing and contracts, and reporting and analytics. And while you're there, be sure to request a demonstration into any of our product offerings to learn why BirchStreet Systems is the leader in Procure to Pay. It's our 20th year anniversary, and we're proud of what we do and how we do it. Because if you need it, you want it, you've got to buy it, there's no better place to get it than BirchStreet Systems. It's goodbye from us, and we'll see you next time right here on Buy It on BirchStreet.